that's the whole thing about vulnerability. Why is it so hard to show vulnerability? It's just because I am so afraid to let people know, that my loved one know that I'm flawed.
Yeah.
I also want to be in control all the time, most of the time, because if I show my vulnerability, doesn't mean that I hand over my own control to the other person, right? What if I got hurt? But again, like, I think what my therapist, also what some other philosophers said, love is craziness, love is blind, right? And recently, I learned more and more, love is not what you say, it's what you do.
Sure.
Love is action, and it's about ability and art to do it. If you have the ability, first of all, to love yourself, so that you always believe in your ability to make yourself happy. And that's how you can be open enough to let yourself be vulnerable. Because from my point of view, true strength is not to protect yourself in a shell. True strength is to not be afraid to get hurt, because you deeply believe in your own ability to get up again and be stronger. And that is about confidence and faith in yourself. It's not, and on the other hand, I'm also not looking to have a relationship to fill a hole in my life. Before I really believed that, I was very influenced by the traditional idea of what romantic relationship should like romanticism, like Alain de Botton has said, that I thought I must be incomplete to let other people to complete me. So I'm always like a hamster in a wheel to chase after the happiness. But I guess like I learned all that through my period of being single, a period in pain, the period in pandemic, and realize it's not that bad to be with myself. I actually enjoy being myself more and more. And maybe perhaps the key to a good relationship is to be in good relationship with yourself in the first place. So yeah, that's my thought in terms of
that's quite a big one for myself actually, is because I go back to China on a yearly basis, minus last year. Every year I'd go back and I would experience quite a lot of pressure from my father, who particularly is keen, and relatives also, for me to get married and have children. All that nonsense, I call it.
All that nonsense.
But it's almost like we spoke about transference. This is their transference, or a hopeful image I would represent to them, which is future happiness, family, stability. It's difficult when someone has an expectation of what their ideal love, happiness, family is, and by their transference, their influence on you can quite easily mold you into thinking that you're incomplete. We are ultimately influenced by our environment because we are adaptive animals. When I read about good novels, amazing love stories, I really think about the difficult times someone has experienced, and somehow that one person has always believed in them. One particular example is, I don't know if you heard of this very famous composer, Edward Elgar.
I think so.
It's a very famous song called Salut d'amour. It's a cello. You'll hear it. Anyone who's sort of heard a cello would have heard it. But he was this guy who's just from the village, and he just decided one day, he needs to make some money, so he became a teacher, music teacher.
Yeah.
His wife, or then student, was this person from a very aristocratic family, the daughter of a general. And she decided that she was going to, marry him, this, nobody from the country. And it hasn't been easy. She had to give up a lot of things in her life to be with this person. For someone who married out of, different social classes, you essentially abandon your family.
Yeah.
And that's what she did. And that hasn't been easy. And throughout the years, the processes where he eventually achieved his fame, throughout the difficult years, it was all because of her. And I look at that and thought, that is utterly beautiful. And I think that's something that really inspires me. It's deeper, it's subtle, and it's timeless.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's more about what you have just said is totally speaks to me in terms of love is action. And I think what is very important, instrumental in relationship is communications, right? And we talk so much about it, but it's so hard to do. And that comes back to the whole point of vulnerability. Sometimes you don't want to say it is because you don't want to be vulnerable. And from my personal experience, it was also more to do with how you perceive a relationship and how you think ideal relationship should be. Because as we mentioned, the whole idea of romanticism, right? I grew up in China. I read so much about relationship, like in a romantic Chinese point of view. When two people together, they should become one. They should be a unified unit. You should understand each other perfectly. Your soulmate. You should read each other's minds. And you should do everything together. And that basically contributed to my past behavior of accumulating annoyance in deep of my heart until it to a certain level that I burst out. So that was more like a passive-aggressive pattern of communication. So in the beginning, you'll be like, oh, everything's great. So your partner assumes everything's great too. And then when it burst out, is fatal because it has accumulated for so long. Me personally suffered from it. In my previous relationships, I could be like very hysterical at certain circumstances, which I'm a very reasonable person, like in general with friends in all kinds of situations, just in intimate relationship, because you're so naked towards each other, not only physically, more importantly, mentally, spiritually, you feel so vulnerable towards each other that when it hurts so much.
Yeah. So crushing.
So now I've been practicing communication in a more direct way, while I'm more candid.